episode of Thirsty Thursday. That's the TT song.
What?
That was a Freudian slip, maybe. I don't know. It was the TT song, Thirsty Thursday song.
Tete song? Oh, okay. Okay.
UT. It's the UT song. Speaking of UT, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, my name is Matt Martin. Alongside me, we have Ryan DeMay and Ray Ito. And on Thirsty Thursday, we like to do a couple things. Sometimes we will just take live calls from whoever decides to tune in. And we'll talk grass just as hard and aggressively as we possibly can. And then at other times, we'll invite people in from the community to come on and take advantage of picking our brain and us in certain instances, picking their brain because, some people don't have health insurance. And, when you get the opportunity to have an MD on, then damn it, you make the absolute most of that opportunity by grilling them with as many questions as possible. But more importantly than solving our ailments is that we have an SEC man on the other end of our guest log tonight. We have Ear, Nose, and Turf. Sir, how the hell are you doing?
What's going on, gentlemen? It's good to be on tonight.
It's good to put a face with the name because, I see you in pictures sometimes and it's like from a distance and sideways. But when you get to see like facial expressions and that stuff, it completes the personality. I've talked to you enough on the shows and in chats and stuff, but to actually have you here, it's a different experience. And I'm happy you're here. Glad you're here, sir.
I'm happy to be here, man. Next step is just meeting in person, and then you can really see my facial expressions.
That's right. And when we do, warning is I have a propensity to lose articles of clothing and hug. I'm a hugger. And that's just the way it is.
And he might cry and call you a really bad name too. I mean, I've seen all those things happen in a matter of like less than 30 minutes. It's a true story.
I can get to it when I got to get to it. There's no delay. Speaking of getting to it when you got to get to it, sometimes if you get to it too hard and you end up watching the sun come up in the morning, that was a cheap callback.
Hypothetically.
George Keith Wilson had a real fun bag time on that one. Boy, he
listen, Matt,
not only did
when the bullets are whizzing over your head. When the bullets are whizzing over your head at the used car dealership, man, you can't tell me that those boys back in the 80s and early 90s selling a Camaro RS, right off the lot, didn't go in there, rip a whole bunch of lines, and play clear the mirror right there in the break room. Come on.
George Keith Wilson wishes he had an IROC Z. He wished he had an IROC
T-tops, yes, for sure. Yes. Or the Trans Am with the whole bird painted on the hood.
You're damn right. The guy doesn't even smoke cigarettes, but he keeps a pack of Marlboro Reds on the dash just in case. When he gets pulled over in it, he revs that V8 up to about 6,000 RPMs as the cop is approaching, just to show the alpha in him. By the way, and the guy thinks that I'm vaping some sort of illicit substance. It's not. This is Keep It 100 OG Orchard. This is a 4 milligram nicotine. This is not Delta 8. This is not THC. I do not partake in that. We were talking about that in the show before the show. So, sorry, George Keith Wilson. The only thing that's fried in my brain is the piece of me that had to procreate and honestly read the absolute garbage that comes out of your brain hole.
George Keith Wilson is the guy that would drive an automatic IROC Z just like he would rotary mow Bermuda grass. That's the same thing.
And
he
would also simp for How To with Doc as well. And has.
Oh yeah.
So not only will he simp for Ginger, he will simp for How To with Doc. The guy honestly he's not doing okay. Someone hurt him at some point in his life, and he's still struggling to rectify all those demons. I get it. Totally get it. Not judge.
But listen, the thing I'm excited about is we've got a doctor on here, right? And we've got a former fraternity member. And now, Ear, Nose, and Turf, you were not in a fraternity, were you? Or you were?
I was. Yeah.
All right, you were. So we got two frat guys here. So I was thinking about this today. Go ahead.
What? Like, look at his fucking tattoo on the side of his. I didn't mean to say that for this early into the show. Look at all the ink he's got over there. He's got ER tats and all doctor tats and all kinds of stuff. What fraternity were you in?
DU.
What is this? What is DU?
Delta Upsilon.
Delta. Okay.
Yeah.
That's got to be a USC thing. There was no.
They're small northern frat because didn't matter that I was there for 4 years. I was a Yankee from the day I got there until the day I left.
So how did you end up? How did you end up at USC? And by the way, for anybody that thinks USC is Southern California, go to hell. It's
Exactly.
South Carolina.
Big Ten member USC. All right, watch your language.
Yeah.
I honestly, I hate the cold. Believe it or not, and
Bless your heart.
I
I get
wanted
it.
somewhere there was, good weather and short skirts.
My man.
I went to USC, and that day in April, flowers were blooming, my friends. It's beautiful weather, is what I mean.
All right.
Beautiful weather. Well, okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'm so hyper right now. I can't say it. Like I'm blown away. That we have an MD on here. I'm just
I'm saying we had an MD. So like this simple act, right? Weird stuff floats through my head all day long, and sometimes you all are unlucky enough to hear it. That's just the way it is. So I'm thinking, like, this all just occurred to me in like a matter of seconds. I'm slicing up strawberries, for the kids, and I dig down deep in the strawberry thing, and there's that one ugly bastard that's got like the white mycelium stuff all over it. It's just one bad strawberry, and I'm thinking, man, tonight we got an MD on. Maybe I'll ask him something about this, whatever. And I thought, man, this is like the guy at the frat that comes back with crabs and takes a shit after his date and gets it all over the toilet seat and gives the entire frat crabs, So, Billy,
I have no
shave that shit
idea
and use
what you're talking about.
Oh, that happened. That's a true story. That happened at Ohio State. Somebody brought crabs back
to Ohio State.
It's just the way we roll up here. You got to shave and use the shampoo. I was not in a frat. I did not participate in this. Wasn't affected or afflicted by it. But it reminded me of that, and I wanted to ask a doctor. Do you ever have somebody that walks in and has crabs all over the toilet seat and gets it up, in your nose or throat area? I don't even know if you can.
I don't remember that test question ever coming up about crabs going from junk to your face.
They should do some work on this, and they should put it on the medical boards, because at some point, Matt, we've got monkeypox now. Okay,
I know.
You got to be careful.
I've been dealing with it for I've got long monkeypox. I've had it for the last 6 weeks, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. But I feel great.
All right, so
awesome.
Without having any crabs on the toilet seat at this house, because we've got a doctor in the house. What
do you see my monkeypox?
I see your monkeypox. Yeah, yeah.
That's all monkeypox.
What's the analysis on those monkeypox there?
ENT's looking at me like, does he legitimately have monkeypox? No, I do not.
High self-index, right?
That's actually what it is. That is chemical burn. Well, I'll leave it as simple as that. It is chemical burn, because right now this is the time everybody talks about how wonderful the South is, right? I've never heard anything negative about the South. The thing is, there's a caveat to it, is that during the summer, I haven't. Shut up, DeMay. I don't want to hear the first negative thing about the South from you. Is that when you wear gloves, is that effectively when it's 90 degrees indoors and it's 90% relative humidity, is that wearing gloves is oftentimes like rubber banding water balloons to your hands, right? And so if you get little bits of urea or ammonium sulfate or ferrous sulfate that fall into the cracks of your glove, and it solubilizes and makes its way into your water balloon, and you gotta dump them out every now and then. But I use my right hand a lot, when I'm like opening super sacks or knocking a clump out of a blender or something, and it gets on me, and it'll give you the monkeypox burn on your wrist, kind of sort of thing. Isn't that weird? Hell yeah! So what in God's green earth possessed you to want to go to medical school? I gotta know.
I was a failed actor, believe it or not. I went to University of South Carolina and became an actor, and they're not exactly known for their acting program, but I was a big fish in a small pond, did well, went back to New York City where I grew up, and I did not want to be a server for the rest of my life. I figured that out pretty quickly, and like most actors, my backup was becoming a doctor. So
George Clooney did that, as a matter of fact. It worked out pretty well for him.
Alec Baldwin too. In fact, that's why they had to stop filming Rust, is that he opted to go to medical school. It was a hell of
and so did Hugh Laurie.
You Laurie, that's right.
Now, you know, and then
Right.
of course you
Did,
can't
though.
you can't forget, you know, OJ was an actor. He did some surgery, you know, and not licensed by the board or anything, but
He's better with a knife than I am. I'll tell you that.
yeah,
He
I
was
mean,
better with gloves than I am too, apparently.
if it doesn't fit, you must have quit.
So acting, like, were you more interested in film, Broadway? Like, what was your niche?
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly did theater.
Okay.
I can't sing worth a damn, so it was mostly plays, and then I did a little bit of film. I was planning on eventually, you know, being in LA and doing LA, New York type of thing. But man, it is. You think that being a doctor is hard? Being an actor is just so much chance. Like everybody's good at a certain point. Everybody's amazing, and it's just a matter of like time and luck. And with becoming a
Politics.
doctor and politics, yeah,
more about-
and with becoming a
it's more
doctor, it
about
was like
politics,
so
yeah.
much more. Like there's your path. You just have to cross this checkpoint, and then this checkpoint, and this checkpoint, and you know you're gonna be okay.
It's both two extreme levels of self-sacrifice, right? You know, you're having to really put yourself out there in both ways, except one. You know, you kind of eliminate that luck piece of it, and you can just rely on pure determination and what I
Yeah.
like to refer to colloquially as cockstrong. You know, you can just be cockstrong. You're and you know, physically demand yourself. And so, well, of course, if you have the mental capacity too. Let's not. I don't want to discount that. You have to have. You're not going to find a room temperature IQ guy out there, you know, waltzing their way through medical school, I would say.
Sorry, I love
The waltz.
the waltz. I love the dad jokes.
What did one tonsil say to the other tonsil? Get dressed up. The doctor's taking us out. That's funny. Big D over here.
Derek.
Derek,
With the
yes.
anti-joke.
Coming in hot. He's coming in hot. Coming in hot tonight.
So, all right, talk to me a little bit about residency, because that is like the ultimate trial by fire, right? You know, some people become Navy SEALs and they have to experience Hell Week. You decided to become a doctor and you have to experience residency.
Yeah.
What's that like?
It sucks. I just finished my my supposedly hardest year at the end of June, because our first of the year is July 1st.
Okay.
And so I'm now in a year which is supposedly the best year. So so far so good. You know, July's been really, I'm on quote unquote a research month, and I've been on vacation for the past week. So it's really like night and day. But before this, I mean, it's, you know, 80-hour weeks, you know, minimum. And then, you know, you're on call 2 or 3 times a week. So that means, you know, 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. If it's a weekday, you're on call. You're the only ENT in the hospital, in covering multiple hospitals actually. And so, you know, you can be pulled in multiple different directions and just be sweating all night long, and have people die on you while you're sleep deprived. And it's like you said, like, you know, I'm no Navy SEAL, so I can't really compare it, but it feels very similar in that this is like a trial by fire, and you got to get through it and just come out the end sane at the very least.
And be careful on how you answer
surgically
this.
ended.
I'm gonna make light of a very serious situation here, and one, I want to say that not only do I respect the fact that you've decided to become a doctor. 2, it's because you're wearing a V-neck, and we know only the smartest people wear V-necks. If I could get my Here Come the Mummy shirt and a V-neck, I'm tempted to turn it into one myself. But be careful how you answer this. Are you still in South Carolina, or did you trade and defect to the north? Are you a trader?
Yeah, no, I mean, I went right back home.
Oh, son of a bitch! This guy right here.
Wait, you mean physically, right? Not mentally,
Yeah.
like, because my heart's still down there. I mean, I love Charleston. I love, I mean, I was in Columbia, which is the hottest place on earth, but
Yeah.
Charleston wasn't
Yeah.
that far away and is one of my favorite places in the universe. So I do love it down there. But I am way, way north now.
Why would you go back there? I don't get it. It's like cold. Snow.
Well, New York City. So a little bit of my background. I mean, I grew up in New York City. For the most
Okay.
part, I bounced around. Um, Never had a lawn ever until I bought my house when I started residency a couple years ago up here in Central New York. Um, and honestly, after doing the whole theater thing, I had to come back to New York City. It was like it was home, and it was exactly where I needed to be to do what I wanted to do. And then I ended up just staying around there until med school and then subsequently residency, both in upstate New York.
So the transition from real doc to lawn doc.
Yeah, tell me.
How did you bought a house, you had a yard, and then what happened? You had a midlife crisis?
I had I looked out in my yard and I had finished redoing my deck. That was the first project as soon as I moved in to the house. And I looked out the yard and I was like, man, it's a lot of grass. That grass looks different than that grass. I've heard of something called crabgrass before. What? I wonder what that is. And then I Googled it, and next thing I know, I'm like pulling crabgrass out by hand out of my entire yard because it was just completely covered in crabgrass. And I was like, well, it's a weed. You're supposed to pull weeds. That was just all I knew. And I had seen online that crabgrass was bad. So it started there and then it spiraled real quick. I started with the YouTube videos. I think, where probably all of us have started with the most popular YouTube videos and thrown it down, and learning some things, some basics that are actually pretty good. And then some things that cost me a lot of money and a lot of heartache and, probably cost the environment something too. Based on some less than ideal advice, and so I just kept digging deeper and deeper. And Ryan Knorr's videos actually were really helpful, and then stumbled on this podcast called the Turfcast podcast. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but there was this consultant on there who sounded really smart, and I was like,
I don't know.
you know what, I'm gonna listen to this guy. And then he decided to go on another podcast. And here we are.
So that
Honestly,
was
Fanboying DeMay. Never heard of it in
what
my
I'm
life.
hearing.
well, let me say, I'm a huge fan of you guys in general. I'll start this off. Don't you mute me, anybody, because you guys
I
are
won't
you're
mute you,
doing
but I
what
will fight you.
I appreciate, which is you're putting out information. You're not trying to be gatekeepers of information. You're trying to educate. And I mean, I remember stumbling upon your whiteboard videos and just watching them like
Ugh.
over and over again. Yeah, I know. But it wasn't the best of presentations, but I got the information. And I appreciated it. You know what I mean? Like it was, for me, trustworthy because you were explaining it down to the level of detail that it needed to be explained. And you, quote unquote, got into the weeds on things. So I'm a huge fan of you guys, and that's how I ended up here tonight. And
Well, we're a big fan of you too, and listen, there's and I don't know, perhaps you learned this at some point in school, but what is it? Better living through chemistry, kind of sort of thing. It's kind of like you can the adaptation of chemistry and turfgrass management can be fruitful, or it could be absolutely catastrophic, right? And I feel like with any chemistry, just like you don't chop up and snort 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol 4 times a day just for grins and giggles. At the same time, you don't throw it down. If you were bringing in an anesthesiologist to put under one of your soon to be patients, do you high five him prior to washing hands and ask him to throw it down, kind of sort of thing? Hang on one second, John Perry. Let me ask you real quick. If you were entering surgery and your surgeon high-fived the anesthesiologist and he said, "I bet you're going to throw it down," would you continue with that surgery, whether it be elective or not?
I would advise anybody who's thinking of doing this not to.
Okay, I'm good.
Listen, John.
Pure agreement.
John, he would consult a medical professional, right? Somebody who's done it before, has had lots of training, has experienced all that stuff before. Now, John Perry, would you hire a consultant or a golf course superintendent to help you grow in your putting green?
I would advise anybody who's thinking of doing this not to.
That's unfortunate. It really is, and
It is.
here we are. But you know what? I trust that in the future, John will learn from this, and Ear, Nose, and Turf will never, ever, in any professional capacity, ask to throw down when it comes to prescription medications and or procedures on a patient.
Do not throw her down.
Do not throw her
lightly.
down. Place it down lightly, and can you scrub those paddles in for me real quick, just in case something goes wrong?
Go ahead, Doc. Zap my ass. All right, Matt. We're gonna throw it down.
This sounds like a preview to Louisville. That's all.
Yes, we might actually use an AED on that just to see what happens.
Stun gun
Ray
me
will
first,
be the-
just to really
Ray will be-
capture the full spectrum of amperage that can flow through me.
Now, you may not know this, and this has nothing to do with turf nor medicine, but Matt is an absolute sucker for a good stun gun video. So, if you want to, and if you're a member on
Don't tase me, bro.
our channel, go to Dirty Deeds and throw up your favorite stun gun videos, and we'll watch those later in the show, because there's nothing more than watching Matt watch somebody freaking out, and then they get tased, and then they literally just tip over like 100-foot redwood in the forest and faceplant. He can watch it for days, boys.
It's the contrast, right? It's the contrast of like full-fledged panic into just nothingness. It gets me every time. It's so good.
See, folks, he is a real human being. We think all he does is work and talk grass and not watch movies, but he is a real person. When he's not picking a Twitter fight, he's a real treat to be around. So, okay. All right, so you discover this whole turf thing. You come full circle. You find us, and God bless you for finding us. And we're not the end-all, be-all by any stretch. We're somewhere in the middle between doing the best we can and consistently not fucking shit up on a regular basis. We still fuck shit up, but it's gotten less and less as time's gone on. So, with that being said, okay, so you get into this stuff and you finally start figuring out, okay, hey, I can do this, I can do that. What are your first moves? Like, what did you do with the house and the lawn and everything like that? And also because, it can be an issue in a new household. What kind of political capital have you had to expend to push your agenda through?
A whole lot of political capital and financial capital, and
cost me a Range Rover, actually.
A lot of begging and pleading and please, I don't have any other hobbies. So basically, it went step by step. I mean, I went down the wormhole And it was first thing was, let's make this better, and I want to skip past all the mistakes that I made before
that's
I
fine.
came to the truth. I mean, we can talk about it. I can tell you all
but
the
I'm just
stupid
okay.
things
Okay,
that I did.
Well, hang on. I
No,
don't
you
want to
misinformed
be
things that I
accused of
did.
saying you're shitting on everybody. So we'll tap. Hang on. We'll dance around this. We'll talk from a high level here. First things first. Did you try to tackle weeds first, or did you overseed first? Kind of in that step. Did you wait till fall, overseed kind of thing? Did you grab a bottle of quinclorac and go light up the backyard? How did it begin?
All of the above.
Yes.
So
Yes.
probably the first thing was like weed and feed. That's just
Sure.
it go to, right? And that did nothing. And then it was, I was pulling a lot of stuff by hand, and then I tried to kill like mature crabgrass with that little, that pre-made bottle of Ortho crabgrass killer. I got about 7 plants before the bottle was done, and I was like, and then they just sat there dead for the next couple weeks. I was like, well, this is a huge waste of time. But the kicker was when I tried to do the overseed, because I was told you're supposed to do a fall overseed, and I put down a buttload of Milo, Scott's starter with mesotrione, and a bunch of Scott's Kentucky bluegrass, because I heard that Kentucky bluegrass was a good grass. That showed me exactly how much of my yard was creeping bentgrass. And I found out that I had I would say like 40% creeping bentgrass in my yard. And it was just not pretty for a long time. And that political capital of why is our lawn white? Is it going to stop being white? Why is that part right there just dead? That was when I really was like, you know what? I really don't think I'm getting the best of information here. And this is interesting enough for me to get more into it. And so, I that winter was a long winter. I ended up reading, probably one of the first steps is I read the Turgeon textbook. It's a turfgrass management, I think, or fundamentals or something like that. Yeah. I read one or two textbooks just,
for fun
between doing things. Yeah.
Well, he's in that mode, right?
Huge nerd.
I read a book.
Yeah. I mean, when I had some downtime at work, I was just reading through that stuff and really learning the fundamentals and learning the basics and being like, okay, like, I would then go out through the yard and pick up, pieces of grass that look different and learn how to identify what the auricle was and the ligule and, what does, a boat-shaped tip look like, and, really figuring out, okay, that was creeping bentgrass, and it just kept going further and further and further until I was like, all right, I want to invest a little something into this. And probably the biggest step was buying the Massport Rotorola, which was a recommended piece of equipment on Turfcast podcast, I think episode 4.
Yeah, Massport. I was like, that sounds like somebody I know.
Hey, I'm just all I do is just speak information. Whatever people do with it, I can't be held liable. Isn't that what all the YouTube personalities say, right? I'm just making content, right?
Exactly.
I didn't mean to put that paid link for MSMA in my link in the description below. That was.
I didn't mean to bejack my son in the jaw with an elbow when I was talking to the garden lady.
Anyway, so the
stretching it out there.
That
right pec gets a little tight. Too much bench press.
So so you read all the books, and okay. So here is my question on the mistake part and all that kind of stuff. Is you know, what was that precipice that you crossed over, you know, just like in medical school and your
Yeah.
path of residency and everything like that? What was that point you crossed over, like, all right, like, I got to get serious about this because this isn't working? Was it like one singular event, or was it a culmination of a lot of things? What was that moment you were like, all right, I'm going to really like dive into this and try to figure it out the right way, instead of just like clicking through the first 30 seconds of 100 YouTube videos and still not really knowing how to do it, right?
That's how I learned how to do it, right?
Honestly, I think it was probably that Scott's starter with Mesotrion that probably kicked it off, where I saw like, you know, that was a good bit of money, a couple bags of that, you know, bag of seed, a couple bags of Milo. I mean, it wasn't cheap, and it did the opposite of what I wanted it to do. And then, you know, it was just about problem solving. And for me, I'm the type of person who, you know, when I really want to learn something, I cannot learn it wrong, because it's so much harder for me to learn it right afterwards and like relearn
Yeah.
it. So I was like,
unlearn and relearn.
let me stop going to these YouTube videos and let me go down to the source. And so it was, you know, the textbooks, the, you know, Turfcast. It was the oh God, what's that website? The Turf webinars.
Turfnet.
What is it? Turfnet. Yeah,
Turfnet.
Turfnet webinars, guys. If there's any nerd out there who really wants to nerd out, those are some awesome webinars. I will shout out that the Drive Your Growth Rate by Bill Kreuzer is like one of the best lectures I've seen on there. And they break it down, and it's trustworthy, and it's no bullshit, you know? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there. And you got to filter through what's really relevant. But there's some really good lectures there. And yeah, it was just seeing that, like, just absolute failure. And then, like I said, the next step was getting that Rotorola, and like that transformed my yard to, you know, transform my yard into something a lot better, you know. And it was addicting. It was like, okay, these are some cool stripes. This all looks good. This is like really nice. And it just, like, no matter what I did to what I had there with that piece of equipment, I just kept hitting a wall, you know, like whether it was just crapping out in once it got hot, or I think I talked to you guys before, what really, when I did turns on it, especially early in the season with that Rotorola, the roller just completely destroyed the grass. And it was like, just had no tolerance to anything. And I was pouring a ton of fur on it, and I was like, you know, the most expensive investment is cheap grass seed. Let me actually invest in some good grass seed, and can do this, you know. And so I did the full renovation.
Wow.
And that was a lot.
You know, I want to say how proud I am of you that when you have downtime to pick and choose what you're going to read. Some people will pick up Faulkner. Some people will pick up Jack Kerouac.
I'm not smart enough for that. No.
And he's like, you know what? I'm going to pick up a couple of turfgrass books, and I'm gonna do a little Turfgrass 101 self teaching for me here. And listen, why I dig that is that if you looked at the history of what I have read for pleasure over the last 12 years, there would be no books. It would be all basically white papers, just research papers over and over and over and over and over. Because it's fascinating. That's the piece of it that's fascinating to me, is that there's not a day that goes by in this industry that I do not learn something new. And for me, that is completely paramount to my psyche, to my mental health, to me as a human being, that if I ever got bored with it, you know, I'd move away from. it's why I'm married to a foreigner, right? Because it's impossible for me to get married and to get bored in that relationship, because every day you're learning something new about culture or whatever the case may be, and melding languages and all that fun stuff. I like that aspect of always being in a perpetual state of challenge, right? And it's nice that you were able to find that from a hobby standpoint and from a career standpoint, allow you to be in this perpetual state of evolution. So I dig the absolute shit out of that, sir. 100%.
I appreciate it, Matt. I appreciate it, and I think that's why I'm such a big fan. I think we're similar personalities and stuff like that, and it's good to appreciate knowledge. At its most basic, and understanding our limits. And saying that, like, I don't know. This is the amount of information, the amount of evidence we have to support this, and this is why I do this. But maybe I don't know. Maybe there's more to know about this. But yeah. Mostly just me picking up those textbooks just because I'm just an absolute nerd. So anyways, J Pink, if you want to show, actually, I've got before Reno one, you could see that, like, this, like, I had gotten it to a very good standpoint. It looked good. It was a little bit limey green, but the stripes and everything had gotten things really nice and uniform, but it just it was never that real uniform that I wanted it. And so then the Reno burn down, I think the Reno kill, you can show, and Reno burn, just show it all, man. So I went through and I did my best with my sprayer, and killed it all off. Did the front and the back, and then I literally burned the back because I just was bored. I wanted to see what it would do. It burned, not fast enough that I needed to call the fire department, but it burned. No sheds were burned down in the making of that video.
I'm
Hey.
a little disappointed in you.
If I had a shed, I would have burned it down just for you, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you. I highly encourage everyone out there to take advantage of that when they can safely.
The next thing that I did was the sand cap, and that was thanks to Mr. DeMay here, who had said it was like, what's the quote from the movie? Once you get a sip, it tastes so good once it hits your lips.
Yeah, Frank the Tank.
Frank,
that'd be a good movie to watch. That'd be a great movie to watch. Matt is Frank the Tank, really.
And so I sand capped it. If you can put the sand funny video, because that's probably the best. I do not have the equipment. Like I said, this is my first home. I had never mowed a yard day in my life before this. And so trying to put down 46 tons of sand without equipment was a bit of a challenge.
46 tons.
Wait. 46 tons of sand?
How big's the lawn again?
It is 7,000 square feet. That's just one load, by the way. That was just the first load.
Oh my God, Lord!
What did you do this with then?
So, well, at first it was just me and a shovel, as you can see. Snow shovel. And once I got the piles out there, I was like, let me just pull something around it to try to, drag this, to make a makeshift drag. And I had an old baby gate that was lying around. And so I'm pulling this baby gate behind me, and it's like, this is August. I'm sweating. You can see in the video, I'm drenched in sweat. And then I'm like, I got to have something that can pull this. Let me grab my old, my first mower that I got, this Ryobi electric thing that I didn't give a shit about anymore, and just started going around in circles. And I'll tell you what, it did
That's
not.
a lime green
work out.
shirt. Look at the. Do you see the corners there that have not been met with moisture? Just the two corners above his pockets. Sir, your shirt
that's
is
intense.
ruined at that point.
Yeah. So next step was to actually go, what is it? Sand 3 and sand 4, J-Pink.
Lord have
Was
mercy.
the very
The
next
commitment.
day, I made a phone call to a little rental place and decided
To the National Suicide Hotline.
no, it was actually
do
to
have
my
to-
chiropractor.
Oh.
Just kidding. I picked up one of these guys at Sunday.
Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Give me the
Yeah.
dingo.
yeah. So that, you see how much drier that lime green shirt is?
Yeah.
That made quick work of 46 tons of sand.
Are you wearing scrubs as well?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're the easiest thing. I never have to
He
worry
was on
about it, 'cause
call.
it's like,
He was on call.
if I destroy them, I just get another pair. So that actually, that Toro Dingo, I got all 46 tons at least piled out in like 3 hours or less, and then actually spread it out within another hour or two. Now the spreading of the sand was by no means scientific. It was not perfect, and that led to some problems that we got into this year. But
Oh.
I got the sand down. I got some that Lesco seed starter mulch that I threw pellets
Mhm.
out at the yard, and just put the seed out. Put out four different compact midnights. So I had New Glade, Bewitched, Everest, and Midnight.
Oh.
Put down 10 pounds of each over 7,000 square feet. I put down a little bit less than that. So ended up having a little bit extra, which I wanted to just in case. And that was like September 1, and started irrigating. And I'll tell you what, trying to do this on a sand cap without an actual irrigation system in place is just so painful. I
gotta know something. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
When that first dump truck of sand was laid in the driveway, what did your wife think? What was going through her mind?
She goes, the first thing she said to me was, "He told me this was only half."
Oh.
Sweetheart,
Oh.
actually, I checked the load slip and I did the math. It's actually 48.92%. So it's a little less than half, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Because you married a nerd. Sorry.
Yeah, well, the thing she was least thrilled about was actually that she did see how much it cost. Did not cost as much as John Perry paid for his sand, but
Hey,
it was.
you got a guy. You got a guy.
I got a guy. And actually, that's, I'll tell you what. I spent like 6 months thinking about doing this sand cap and going back and forth, but I could not find a guy. Nothing I could do until I made a phone call, like an old person, and actually talked to a human being and was like, "Hey, where can I get this sand?" And he was like, "Oh, just call my boy Frank. He's got it. Yeah, it's USGS spec. Yeah, we'll hook you up." And I was like, I spent 6 months like trolling the internet trying to figure this out. I was like,
Listen. You ain't finding nobody in a sand pit that doesn't have a fax machine that has ever been on any social media platform, right? Or gives a fuck what the latest slang is. Like everybody at the sand pit, they're living in the past, man. They're living in the past. So,
Can you write me a check?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have a check.
They do if you pay there at the weigh house, they're probably doing the old slide back and forth credit card thing to get you the piece of paper. And pay for
You know, we're gonna put 2% on this, you asshole, for covering the charge fees.
We only accept
Some-
Diners Club.
Damn.
Or
come in here.
or can you pay cash? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, can you pay cash? Can you pay cash? I mean, that's the
Don't
other
waive
one. Is
tax
that
if you pay cash. That's when you know you're dealing with an old guy. Be like, if you pay cash, you ain't got to pay taxes on it. I'll be like, oh, doesn't matter.
ooh, yeah. Well, actually,
Run by the ATM.
now that's kind of going away ever since the IRS and various states started tracking all cash transactions or cash deposits above, I think, $10,000 in one day.
Mm-hmm. See?
I mean, ever since they started doing that, you're highly encouraged to pay via check or card because check and card transactions are not subject to IRS reporting.
Did
Did
everybody
you-
hear that?
did you guys-
Look, we're not just
No.
teaching grass and medicine here. We're also teaching tax evasion. It's one of the things we get into.
Yeah, usually we just save this for the after show, but
Oh, you know,
when in Rome.
when in Rome.
When in Rome,
I don't know
I
what
mean,
that means.
oh, yeah. You see, I'm
Look at the banker's
actually
tab, man.
probably the guy you don't want to know because let's just say that I'm probably the shadiest one on here.
Beep beep. Sorry, I'm trying to insert some breaks in there to trick the algorithm in case they start flagging Ray all of a sudden.
All right, so you
Split
didn't
that up.
anticipate that the irrigation. So talk to us about the challenges.
Yeah.
What were the challenges specifically, and moreover, what would a automatic irrigation system have helped you out with? And I still don't think it would have overcome all those challenges, but lay it on us. Look at that. Look at that thing.
Yeah.
Beautiful bastard.
So
Goodness.
It's
My
good looking,
gosh.
goodness,
good looking.
right.
This is a nice looking rod.
So the challenges. Let's
Telecool.
starting with what the equipment that I used was. I had two of those 4 spout. What's it called? Hose timers.
Mhm.
One on the front of the house and one on the back. So what I was running was basically 4 irrigation heads on the front and 4 irrigation heads on the back, doing like basically 10-minute intervals or whatever, and trying to time it out so that one was going at a time, because I had the Hunter PGP Ultras on there with the max flow rate that I could get without losing pressure, and that was, I think, either a 6 or an 8 on there, and that equipment itself just failed on me. I mean, it after a couple of days, like, that hose end timer just started not working. Like, it would just not turn off, and then I'd have one irrigation head that was just kept going, and then the other ones were cycling, and then so I've got half pressure, so I'm just like dumping water and which is washing sand down, and it was a nightmare. I think that part of it, if I had an in-ground system, would have been a lot better. Just being able to trust that it's going to work when you say that it should, and have a little bit more fail safes there. The thing that probably wouldn't have been much of a difference was the fact that I was on a slope and I decided to go without any erosion control. So that is where I got into some trouble too, because I ended up having some washout areas, just where the water flows, the sand would go, and it's been
No
a problem throughout.
geotextile reinforcement,
Nothing.
C3 matting.
Like I said, I put the Lesco pellets down, but that's about it.
Yeah, those aren't going to do the erosion
Sludge.
control so much, but yeah.
Sludge.
Yeah, they said they had tackifier in there, DeMay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's like,
Yeah, it's just
just,
a
it doesn't
washout area.
count. Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Look at this.
Yeah, so that's from like a downspout area right there is just you could see, and so now that things are grown in, like that area is fine. It's just like it's super not level. Like what I had gone into this project thinking was I was going to level my lawn, and what I ended up with was less level than what I started with. But that's okay because I skipped
steps.
ahead of, I skipped ahead because now I've got at least a 2-inch sand cap pretty much throughout the entire yard, and I don't have to do a slow build up. I can fix those little areas and just move forward from here. But it's been a pain in the ass to mow this year. So I'm just looking forward to, moving forward. And yeah, then this was a big problem here. And we had talked about this in one of my drunken phone calls to you guys. Is that I had these dry spots and I was like, they are zapping like immediately. And after talking to you guys, I was like, let me actually just see how deep this is. So I plugged one area where it was dry and where it died, and one area where it was green. And it was the difference of an inch in these pictures, but there was one dry area that was 6 inches of sand cap. So, that non-scientific method really ended up biting me in those areas, especially
poor
now
baby gate.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's probably like the hardest part right now dealing with is those.
So this
areas.
was last fall that you did this.
Yeah. When I established it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So what does it look like now, and what have been the challenges you faced this year so far? And also, how's the weather been? Because I assume that you're still unirrigated. That looks terrible. I mean, you know what? This is fucking unacceptable. I'm sorry.
And believe it or not, this back area, this is like the minimum. I've done very little to this. I just started putting any level of irrigation on it like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And this picture is probably a week old. So it perked up real quick after putting some irrigation on it. But the front area is really
looks
the money maker.
I'm shocked at the little natural grass swale there. It's doing really well.
So that's been a challenge. That failed miserably. J Pink, if you see swale fail in there, yeah. So
is this one of those things where it looks good from a distance and then?
Yeah, it does not look great right now. It looks okay. Look, it looks better than I thought, and better than what I'd had at the beginning of the season. Because that swale is a spring seed. So in April, I dug up that entire area. I dug a 4-foot trench and put in a perforated drain pipe, 100 feet of it, and put in a sump pump in the back.
Damn.
Did you put in geotextile reinforcement then?
No. So I just did a drainage basin on one side. That the problem is all of the water that's coming on from other properties. So it's just a constant trickle from like uphill. And then there's a huge tree root like right at my property line that basically just stopped all the water and it was standing water. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right there.
Oh, yuck.
And
yuck.
Yeah. And that was like last year. It was like 365 days. It was like that. It was just constant standing water. And so, I was like, I got to do something about it, So I put in the sump pump. Yeah.
Please tell me
What were
that
you
here.
saying?
Can you put that picture back up?
Where do you pump the water to?
So like a catch basin or something?
We'll talk
Don't
about
ask,
it
don't tell.
in the after
Okay.
show.
That's fine.
Okay.
That is fine. That's all I need to know.
Just as a matter of
DADT.
principle, please, when your child's old enough to have a swing set, please don't make them cross this body of water and have to give them that National Weather Service warning. Hey, turn around, don't drown. If you see a puddle, if you see standing water, it's deep enough you could die in it. Don't make them cross over that shit, or build a bridge, or do something, man. These parents over here, that's child endangerment. Hashtag woke parent. All right. So let's go ahead.
So I spring seeded that after putting, I re-leveled that area back there, starting at the swale back to the fence, is all no sand. Wasn't allowed to put a sump pump there either. But basically, that's all just spring seeding and put down some tenacity. And it is mostly crabgrass, lots and lots of nutsedge over at the far end there.
Sure.
And it's gonna need some work. It's definitely like the area that needs the most work.
Hang on. I'm gonna snuff you right here and say, listen, if you have that much sedge there, I would not try to get rid of the sedge in favor of another grass. The Carex species is going to tolerate incredibly dry weather. It's going to tolerate incredibly wet weather. You can interseed into it with all the fine grass you got, but considering that's a swale, I would call that a natural area, and I'd let the sedge proliferate and do what it's going to do, and then leave your line of lawn grass, up there where it's a bit easier to maintain, in my opinion.
I think that's fair. I mean, it's the simplest option. What do you want there, though? That's my question. Is like there's not. It's always going to be. I'm not going to say always an eyesore.
Rain garden. You need to install a rain garden.
Yes, a bioswale.
Yes. Listen, I'll get hippie here. I'll get hippie. I would like. Well, I mean, considering you already have the swale there, it backs up on the other end over here. It would not be anything to me to continue to let that swale run and then capture it in a rain garden and make it a nice little feature right there, somewhere behind your garden, your actual garden.
Everybody wins.
Yeah, I mean it's I thought of everything, even the bridge to Terabithia. And honestly, at a certain point I was just like, I just don't want water here. And nature really helped out this year with how much drought we're getting. If I had done nothing, it probably would be at least somewhat dry. Because this, we've gotten just no rain at all, especially compared to last year. But I don't know. I mean, I ideally, like, I'd like it all to be uniform because that satisfies my OCD, and I want things to all look good, but it doesn't bother me that much. I just it's better than the bent grass that was there. That was all bent grass.
What about putting in a retaining wall and elevating it, and then that's just kind of the no man's land behind it?
Can't even see it.
Yeah, I mean, doing that and putting up a fence, I've thought about. It takes out 1,000 square feet of the yard. The other thing that this house is an experiment. This not permanent place. I'm likely going to be here for another 2 to 3 years. Maybe a little bit longer, depending. But I just every time I think about what I want to do, I weigh the cost and any of the returns that I'm going to get on that investment. And that's why I've done everything like by hand and things that are really just, not textbook and baby gateable, Yeah. So, yeah. But, honestly, I see that it's already 10 o'clock. I feel like I've been talking for an hour. And I do have like a ton of questions for you guys.
All right.
Um,
Turn on the
Let's
question
do it.
meter.
Let's do it.
um,
Yeah.
So I think the first, and we've already sort of touched on this, but the first thing I want to talk about is irrigation. So uh, when we were talking on the phone on one of the call-in shows, I was trying to stammer through what my question was, which was, soil, plant available water. And right now, with the sand cap that I've got, uh, you know, I f- I feel like there's just not a lot of plant available water, and I've got to be like really on top of it. And how long is that going to be a problem? And maybe just get down to the fundamentals of, field capacity and wilt point and that kind of thing. Teach me.
Okay. So, what you are talking about, right, is water potential, right? Matrix water potential, which we can measure in kilopascals, is the most widely used way to do this. And so, the further and further we go into the negative, the less and less water is available, and we know what we call the permanent wilting point. So you talked about field capacity, right? The capacity at which the soil has no more room physically within that profile, right? Within that given volume for us to add any more water to it whatsoever. The permanent wilting point depends on the type of crop or plant that's in that soil. And so different turf grasses have different permanent wilting points. And so if you are one that follows and watches those TurfNet webinars, you know how people have used, or have you seen those TDR devices used that will sense how much volumetric, soil moisture meters, right?
Yeah.
So those soil moisture meters are not reading water potential. Those are reading volumetric water content. So they're saying, hey, in this given volume of soil right here, you've got 19% water, okay? So that's useful in the sense of, from one site to the next, that 19% or 20% might mean that it's really, really wet at your place and really, really dry at another place. They're close, but they're not always calibrated. Whereas this water potential, and using that as the metric, is across any different soil. The permanent wilting point for a plant is the permanent wilting point for that plant. Doesn't matter if it's in sand, doesn't matter if it's in clay soil. Regardless, that is the permanent wilting point. So if you're growing Kentucky bluegrass, we know that the permanent wilting point of that is somewhere, the permanent wilting point, like where it's like done, bye-bye, no more, is somewhere in the like 700 to 800 negative kilopascals. So negative 700 to 800 kilopascals. Okay, so if we use that as a metric and we use that to look at your turf, I think that's something that being you obviously, if you're in the hospital, you're monitoring telemetry from patients and looking at their vitals and all that kind of stuff. This is the same thing, right? So some water potential sensors in your soil would be huge, and also too using that at varying depths to try and understand where's my root depth relative to where the water potential is in my soil. The deeper the soil that you have, right, the drier it's going to end up being on top. And so what you might see, especially in more shallow-rooted Kentucky bluegrass in its first summer, right, is that you have some modeling in some different areas that are a little bit more difficult and challenging to deal with. The last thing I'll say, specifically on a sand cap, right, and one that hasn't built sufficient organic matter to hold and retain water, because I bet your OM level right now is probably like 1 something. It's probably really, really low. So we know
two, I think.
2. Okay. 2.
He's got my soil tested. Yeah.
Okay, so 2, still relatively low, especially considering it's a new crop. So 2% organic matter. So, we know that every 1% of organic matter in soil will hold about 25,000 gallons of water, right? So extrapolate that down for your 7,000 square foot lawn, you can figure out how much water, in theory, that you can hold in that soil based on your organic matter percentage, okay? The last piece of this is using wetting agents to help you with this, okay? So, I'll ask you: have you tried and/or considered using wetting agents on your sand-capped lawn?
Well, I have a big old bottle of soaker from the lawn
Ooh,
supply company that is en route to my house right now.
en route to your house
Um,
right now.
yeah, so I haven't been able to play with it just yet. But so talk to me a little. This is the part where I hit a wall, where it's like, we talk about the soil chemical properties and the soil physical properties. And when we're actually using a surfactant, we're affecting the soil chemical properties. And if the problem is with the physical property of the soil, how does the surfactant or wetting agent benefit in this situation where we haven't gotten any hydrophobic spots or anything like that just yet?
So it's really a couple of different ways here. Ray, why don't you jump in on the block copolymers and how those work, and then I'll come back in on the physical stuff.
Okay, the way that these block copolymers work is that what they do is they ensure uniform wetting and penetration when you do have water. And so, because here's what happens when you have sand, and this is like a special problem, especially with sand, is that a lot of times some or small amounts of organic matter present in sand can become hydrophobic because your organic matter is typically derived from plant material, right? And that plant material often has either waxes or oils present in the plant tissue, and those waxes and oils will help the sand become partially hydrophobic, especially if your area is subject to severe dry down, and then all of a sudden, after that severe dry down, you try to get water back into it. That's when you'll notice that, hey, this ground or this area is not accepting water. The water is just beating up and rolling off, or else only the surface is getting wet, but then the rest of the water is not going down through the full depth of sand. That is where something like a block copolymer surfactant will
So
come
I
in
don't mean to.
and ensure wetting.
So is it like a preventative step then? Because um, you know, or are you saying you think that there's still already some hydrophobicity that's becoming a problem in this sand cap already?
You might well have some slight hydrophobic conditions present in the sand, and in that case, especially when dealing with turf areas that you see burning out, my first response to that, if I do see a turf area that is burning out like that, is I will use one of those guns that has that solid wetting agent pellet in it,
The pellet
that
probe.
solid block of wetting agent, and I'll hook that up, and I'll start spraying everything down with that thing, because that gun is very good at applying exactly what you need at this time, and that is water plus a wetting agent. Okay, that is exactly what's needed. And in the case of sandy soils or sandy areas that have been subject to extreme heat and drought, I normally consider it very important to almost treat it proactively. I consider
Yeah.
that kind of an
Yeah, I mean,
important thing
definitely, especially with that sine wave of complete dry down to re-wetting. Eventually, I
trying to
know
get
that I'm going to get. Yeah, I mean, so what I'm seeing is like, and is when I'm wetting it down, like it has no problem with infiltration right now. Like it's
Mhm.
just as soon as it goes in, it is sinking in. It's just
It goes.
it and there's no beating or anything that's happening, but like it it just feels like there's no water holding in there, and that especially in those deeper areas of sand, which is
Okay.
why trying to cross that bridge of how chemically does the wetting agent help in that situation, where you've just got too many macropores,
Well, here's
you've got
here's
no
what's
holding
happening.
capacity.
Here's what's happening is that what may be happening is that you may be getting some wetting at the very surface or at the first inch or so. But what happens if deeper than that, instead of that water going down and wetting all the way down, it's just not going all the way through? Because the way I judge efficacy of irrigation is I want to see that water go down and wet that 6-inch depth or so uniformly throughout the area. That's what I want to see. And so whenever somebody tells me about a random dry area, I ask 2 questions. Number 1, do you have uniformity of irrigation? Number 2, do you have an issue with the media composition throughout your lawn? Because right now I'm dealing with a lawn where, bloody hell, somebody sodded over areas that contained gravel.
Mm.
And
This
so
a horrifically rudimentary drawing I just did in
I
Photoshop.
love this.
But
okay,
It's a perfect
the
comparison.
point here is to show that even though you may be getting infiltration, your infiltration may not be even across the colloid. Versus by adding the surfactant to it, you are going to get a more even distribution of water through the profile. Does that make sense?
yes, yeah, because
Yeah.
what I'm trying to
It
get
helps
at
with
is I want to see the ground wet more like the drawing on the right hand side versus the drawing on the left, where the water's just kind of wetting only in some places. I mean, I want to see.
Following your path of least resistance, where
Right.
I've got
Yeah.
equal space, below buildup of organic matter, or depending on the level of decomposition of organic matter, it may really like that area, it may really not like that area. Versus, with that surfactant, you really try to evenly distribute the infiltration as evenly as
So
possible, as
then,
deep as possible.
do you think that with the addition of a surfactant, I would be able to stretch out my irrigation intervals?
This is where it gets a bit more complex, and it's difficult to say that yes, that is always the case that will happen. There are going to be some chemistries specifically that will increase the potential for that to take place. But again, a lot of that is going to be case by case scenario, depending on um, ET rates, soil composition, like you're talking about, the density of turf. All of these are gonna kind of play into it, and then of course the chemistry you choose. Um, in certain instances, yes, it can, because you are getting a more even distribution across. And then in other instances, is that it will have a bit more of a retaining effect. Um, but I don't want it to sound like you're going to be able to reach for something in a bottle and it is going to take the place of having to water the grass, because that is not necessarily the case.
Because
Right. And
here's
so
what I'm going to
that
tell
I
you.
think. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Here's what I'm going to tell you about trying to water shallow rooted grasses on sand. For me, I would not be alarmed or think it's extraordinary to be applying as much as a quarter of an inch to a third of an inch of water every other day. Okay? I don't think that that's extraordinary. In fact, what I would probably say is anytime somebody starts yammering about putting down a half inch of water at a time, I start to question whether they actually know what they're talking about, because for me, a half inch of water at a time in many cases is too much. And it's
Right.
too much because I'm watering past my root zone depth. And secondly, depending on the soil, that soil has no capability of even holding on to that much water anyway. And so by applying that excess of water, all I'm doing is just flushing all of my nutrients down and past where I need them anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and so I mean,
you know,
I think that kind of goes into my second question there, which is in irrigation design.
mhm.
You know, and trying to balance that with the checkbook here. You know, I want to do. I know. I see your face, Demay. But you know, get creative. That's my motto. And you know, I've had in my mind, you know, some creative solutions to this, and some DIY irrigation setup that I could put in there. But before I go digging into my beautiful yard that I just worked so hard, you know, I want to know what you guys think about, you know, first of all, do you do any irrigation design yourselves, or you know, do you leave that to other people?
I deal with my own irrigation designs. I know I do, because I
actually
have certain
went to trade school for it.
requirements. Yeah, I have certain requirements that that you know I want met.
So, some like simple questions, which is the, you know, triangulation versus what the square
Square.
method.
Block design.
Yeah. Triangulation, you're going to have more overspray, right? You're going to have more waste. Is that right?
Yes, yes, you can have a lot more overspray, but then here's the thing: is that when you triangulate your head placement, triangular placement of the heads works better if your areas are not uniform square or rectangular areas. So your typical suburban landscape where there are no straight lines, I'd probably lean towards a triangular head spacing versus if I had a
Football field.
lawn, or if I had a football field, Bowling Green, or the property in Hawaii that actually didn't have any landscaping in it, and there was just, you know, rectangles and squares of grass, then I'd go the other way and I'd insist on square spaced or block spaced heads.
So
it depends.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I had a square-sided shed, I would probably go with a block design that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 180 gallons a minute to quickly extinguish any fires that could start in and around. Just figuring, I'm just picturing Matt punching up his, you know, his Hunter HydroWise app and be like, "Oh, I'm going to run the shed fire program right now," and it's out.
And it's done.
This guy right here.
The fire service doesn't need to come.
It's a great idea.
Hey,
you should market it.
You know, would have worked better than that flexible hose that you had, right?
You know,
well, I was going to say, you could
For
have
me-
Hunter come out and send a bald guy that looks like he's killed somebody in a work shirt and do a whole YouTube video with you on your property. I think it'd be great.
You know, and on a serious note, I have to ask, why do the people that live in areas adjoining what's essentially dry forests that are like a tinderbox ready to go off, why do those people not have high volume sprinkler heads on the perimeters of their property? None of them are ready. I mean, I just watch the news all the time, and I see these poor bastards, and first the trees next to their property catch fire. Next thing you know, their freaking roof is on fire. House is gone. I mean, that is just I never understood, because if I were living next to a dry forest, you know what I'd have all around my property? I'd have the Rainbird 8005s pointed out into the woods. And I just say, here's the setting on my irrigation controller for fire.
So I will say that, like, the reason I took this gamble was last year and the year before. I mean, we had just incredible, perfect weather. You know, it rained 8 inches in July. It rained like 5 inches in August. It was raining regularly. I never had to water anything, and that was the garbage lawn that I had before that. So I was like, you know, it'll stay on this trend. What could possibly go wrong? You know, and I mean, I do live in such a temperate climate that I really thought that we could potentially get away with non-irrigated lawn. And I mean, that's where my question is do we think that with organic matter buildup, use of soil surfactants, and maybe a little bit more slinging a hose around, I can keep this up, in the years to come without going for an irrigation system?
I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't. And the reason why I wouldn't is because, when I'm dealing with a lawn or a landscape, I try to eliminate as many bad things as possible that I don't have control over. So, irrigation or water, specifically a lack of water, I don't want to be at the mercy of Mother Nature, because, like, right now where I'm at, it has literally been, I want to say, going on 60 days at least since we've had an inch of rain. Okay, it's been going on 60 days at least. So I would not want to place myself at the mercy of nature, because I see what happens to these people, for example, that they look at and selectively remember all the times when it's constantly raining, and then when Mother Nature shuts off the water for 4 months, look at their lawn now. Look at their lawn now, or what's left of it.
Yeah, I had to even break into asking my wife to start watering for me, and
yeah, because you know what? Here's the thing:
boundary
is
I did
that,
not want to cross.
okay, here's the thing: is that might give you a little bit of leverage in that you tell her, okay, we're going to have to bury pipe in the lawn, or else, dear, you're going to have to be dragging sprinklers across our entire lawn during the daytime. Which one is it? I mean, you offer the choice. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think you can, if you want to get into it, but not spendy. You know, what you could do is just put your main line out there and then get yourself some quick couplers at various spots so it's a little bit easier to move those hoses around. It's not just like the hose bib and you're running hoses everywhere. It could be a very small, just stand-up sprinkler that you're able to pop in. It's got a short hose, and bam, you can hit this zone and move along. So, you know, something like that could work. Save you a bunch of money, so you're not buying valves, you're not buying heads and installing all that kind of stuff. It's just literally the main line loop, and you get some quick couplers. That could work. I mean, I'm not against that, and I agree with you. I think it's probably like I don't know. You could endure a stretch up there of 2 or 3 weeks with no water, because whenever it starts to cool down, you're going to have good weather. Like a cold front comes through and you're like, for a couple of days, you got great cool season weather, even in the middle of summer. So I don't feel so bad. If you were 300 miles south, I'd be like, well, you know, you can reseed in the fall. You can overseed in the fall. It'll be fine.
Yeah, keep on overseeding every year.
That was what was on the bottom. You know, all if we had you know, burn and return lawn care, you know, on the bottom of all our invoices would say, don't worry about that. Shit'll grow back. It's fine. Totally fine. That's our disclaimer.
Or else here's the disclaimer. It can be overseeded. Yeah, it can be overseeded. Yeah. That's the standard disclaimer, and that to me is the beauty of cool season grass. Okay, to me that is the beauty of cool season grass, is that there's all kinds of seeds available. Whereas for me, I'm a little bit extra and crazy because there is no seed for any of what I deal with. There is none.
You just chop it up and throw it out there, though, you know?
Yeah, the only thing that might get you in trouble is using that MSMA on your zoysia grass in July. But
hey.
All right, so what else you got, question-wise? So what else do we got?
Other questions.
I threw a bunch of stuff in the Discord related to surfactants, and so, you know, at your leisure.
Yeah, I want
to.
I'll dig deep on it. I've already started, you know, doing my digging, and you know, I want to go. I want to try everything that I can. I just want to understand it, and you know, be able to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So, yeah. So the other questions, actually, J-Pink, if you could pull up the growth potential, fancy schmancy little stupid graph that I put together.
Oh, I love this.
We can talk about the differences in where I live and what your management practices are going to be like because of this. You know, I know we've touched on it in past Thirsty Thursdays. I know you with Jay Backer, that was a big one. I'm not quite as cold as Grand Marais, but it doesn't really exactly. So all I did was I just tracked the daily growth potential for 2021, and then did a little average there with a monthly average. So you can see, like, from basically mid-May to mid-October, I'm above that 50% line on average, and there was only, like, you know, 5 days throughout the entire year where I took a dip below 50 because of high temperatures. And so my question related to this specifically is the sand capping and planning that out. Do I have more wiggle room? And what exactly, when you're saying, oh, you know, look for, you know, good weather ahead, you know, moderate weather ahead, are you really trying to plan for? Because you don't want it to get too hot, right? And you know, do some damage. But but you also want it to be warm enough that your grass is actually growing and you can grow through the stress that you're putting it through, right? Do I have that right? I mean, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, so when I look at this, right, I'm looking at the extremes from mid-May through October, right? And I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 events that look to be maybe 2 to 3 days in duration where shit hit the fan and your growth potential dropped to like what, as low as 15%. So that day was hot as shit, you know, and you had some colder days leading into that, right? So the daily thing is a good thing to look at. So, you know, if you drew a line of best fit between those, and not necessarily an average, but a line of best fit, that's where I think that'll tell the story. So are you asking the question on how to manage nitrogen in and out of those weather events, or what's the question exactly?
So that's my second question. But mostly it's about the fundamentals of what stresses out the grass. And so in particular, planning out the next sand capping when I'm gonna, you know, try to fill in these smaller areas, you know, what to you is a forecast that you're like, I'm not gonna put sand down right now because we're gonna overstress the grass or do more harm than good, and what looks good to you?
I'm going to say for you and what your grass is accustomed to, I would say anything where your daytime highs are over 90 and anything where your nighttime lows are above, say, 68, 70 degrees, something like that.
Like so rare, you know. That just
happens
so rarely.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't really see.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, it would be like
the end of August may not be the most opportune time for you, but it's also seed time. But the rest of I mean, really, from May through September, I mean, and I would have no qualms whatsoever about sanding at all.
Okay.
So where do you what goes into that number, the 90 and 68? Like what informs that?
Well, that forms go back. Yeah, go back and read Tertian. I was gonna say go back and read Tertian, and they'll tell you right what's the optimum Matthew, the genetic limit of the grass. What's the optimum temperatures, air temperatures for cool season growth?
Right, cool season
68
growth.
Right?
Yeah. Cool season growth.
Like that's for photosynthetic potential, right? But
not
clipping yield increases beyond that, right? Isn't that's what
increases
Kreuzer
beyond
has
that? But
modeled
then,
out.
right?
So
then
if
what
clipping yield increases beyond 68, and you're trying to basically have the turf recover, so you want more growth, more top growth.
Stop.
Would you want it a little bit warmer?
No,
If
because
clipping yield is the surrogate for actual growth in general.
Actually, there's one more thing to consider, and that is what I have become very aware of, I want to say in the last, 10 to 15 years, is what I'm actually paying attention to in grass is carbohydrate reserves. And when I say carbohydrate reserves, what I'm considering is in a cool season grass, the reason why that 68 degrees at night is so important is because a cool season grass is rapidly stressed and depleted by having those nighttime temperatures above 68. And so this is why, this is where it gets deceptive now. If your grass is still growing, quote unquote, has a lot of vertical growth, leaf growth, it can also be depleting those carbohydrate reserves. So my ideal conditions for a cool season grass would be when nighttime temperatures go below 68 and they stay that way for at least a week or two. That is when I'd be subjecting it to a high stress condition like making it grow through a sand cap. And likewise, I'm completely opposite or flipped on that when I'm dealing with a warm season grass, in that I find that its critical temperature is my nights must not be below 75. Because if my nights are below 75, then likewise, I'm running into a problem where, because of those low nighttime temperatures, I'm then running through carbohydrate reserves at that time as well. So it's all about, just because you see the vertical growth or the leaf growth doesn't mean that the grass is actually healthy. And likewise, that is and that's exactly why, for example, I advise people with a cool season grass, beware of pushing the grass with nitrogen at the wrong times.
And that's honestly the second part of the question with nitrogen, is like I said, it is balancing this idea of top growth being really sacrificial, where we're talking about luxury consumption, or, just too hot that you're stressing the grass out. But you also want to have quick recovery. So like, when you want it to be sanded and then not look like a volleyball court, balancing that out, making sure that you still have enough top growth that you're going to be able to recover quickly, but it's just not too hot, I guess this is where my question is. And then, in general, where is that point when it comes to luxury consumption of nitrogen? How do you determine what luxury consumption is? How do you determine, when you're really having too much top growth? And if you're in a climate like mine, where it really is temperate and you really are technically building more and more carbohydrates because of the air temperature, what's that threshold of too much nitrogen? I know that's a lot of questions, but
no. I feel like you're confusing yourself on this. So you're using growth potential, right?
Right.
Growth potential is your bread and butter there, right? So
that's your guide.
If you're at 90% growth potential, and let's say you're using, I see you've got put in here a full pound per month, and I would say that's 3/4 of a pound
that was
to a
just
full
for
pound a month. If you wanted to take into account potential for nitrogen loss or something like that, maybe run it up to a full pound. But that would be your cap, and then I'd say you could balance that against your growth potential, right? And the big thing to look for is when your daily temperatures are exceeding or are becoming so excessive that your growth potential begins to decline, right? And that's
Right.
where you want to make sure that you're not being too aggressive with nitrogen, because you don't have the potential to grow, but you're applying the primary element to drive growth, right? So you're working against yourself because it's counterintuitive. So really, your growth potential chart in that case is your determining factor.
So I guess that what I got confused about is probably went too deep in the weeds. But J Pink, if you could pull up that, let's see, what did I label it? There was a lecture that I was watching by Kreuzer. It's clipping yield is what it's labeled as, where he talks about the difference of clipping yield versus the growth potential model. And this is tall fescue. He didn't, in this lecture, have anything on bluegrass, nor could I find what he said that he had done anywhere. But if you can, that would be awesome. So where you're sort of looking for good growth potential and good top growth to make sure that you're recovering quickly. Is that correct, or am I still confusing myself?
I don't know the first thing. I'm so far behind on clipping yield that this is way outside of my wheelhouse.
So here's what Kreuzer would tell you too, is that you probably shouldn't use growth potential as a day-to-day monitor, right? And Larry Stoll would tell you the same thing too, that as those two have cross-pollinated and learned about, how Larry developed the growth potential model and how Bill has taken clipping volume and used that to be, sort of the speedometer in effect, right, of how fast things are moving, we find that clipping volume is a much better day-to-day measurement, right, to see where you're at. And then growth potential lagging here, right, isn't always the case. But what he's showing here basically is that as your clipping yield goes up, your sugar production goes up. And the whole idea makes sense in theory because we have more photosynthetic area on the plant, right, and thus our sugar production, right, our growth potential of that entire plant. And it's not just looking at shoots, right? Well, I think that's one thing too that people get conflated, is that growth potential is not necessarily shoot growth, right? We're growing at 2 points, right? We're going down with roots and we're going up with shoots. And so the idea here and what he's showing is that in theory, as we get more photosynthetic area on the plant, right, the plant is able to produce more sugars and therefore we grow the plant faster, right? So that all being said, to answer your question,
of course, Domain.
He was just about to answer my question.
Oh, wait. You cut out when you said to answer your question.
And then
to answer your question, I'm sorry. There's a whole bunch of people here that are probably like, what the hell are these people doing? So to answer your question, it is this. It's we're way too deep in the weeds to answer the original question.
I know.
It's a simple answer. The simple answer is when it's hot. And when I'm saying hot, there's a whole other component to this. When it's hot and it feels hot and you're fucking uncomfortable outside, you probably shouldn't do shit to the grass that you might want to do. Okay? So let's just start with the comfortability factor. The other thing too is when we're talking about sand, right? The methods in which you incorporate it are hugely important. Hugely important because one thing that people will do, like if you did the baby gate thing again, I would not recommend doing that. First of all,
do you still have that baby gate?
Yeah, I'm gonna clean it up. I'm gonna use it.
You should probably get that thing bronzed and just hang it in the garage and film a YouTube video with it in the background. That's what I'd recommend you do with it.
It's still got that piece of nylon string hanging off.
He's gonna go to leave the room tonight, and the baby gate's gonna be up in the hallway. He's gonna be like, "What?" And his wife was like, "I heard you talk about more sand."
Somebody's gonna reenact that in Tijuana with a donkey and a Mexican baby gate and turn it into some TikTok that's gonna go viral.
Oh, yuck. Yuck.
But the donkey will be pushing a Ryobi electric mower though, for sure, right? So
yes.
So to answer the other part of your question, the incorporation method is huge. If you go on the Discord, I think Evie and the way that Evie did his sand incorporation, I thought was perfect, literally perfect, and he spent a lot of damn time doing it. Right? He even got the old lady out there, I'm pretty sure. So little sweat equity, sweetheart, can we come together both
let's
sides?
Not shoot for the stars, okay?
Well, I'm just saying, you get some help, and maybe it'll go faster. I don't know, but basically his method, he spread everything out, and then he went back with a hose and basically pushed all that stuff down in. So non-abrasive, like if you were dragging something across. Imagine if I had a handful of sand and I drag it across my skin. Well, your skin's about as sensitive, if not a little more so, or more so tough, right, than the tissue on a leaf blade of cool season grass.
I have to interject.
Please.
I have to interject in that, I often get shocked looks when I proceed to bury a turf grass area in sand, and it looks like a damn beach when I'm done. However, what happens after I've laid out all that sand is extremely different from what I see other people typically doing. There is no aggressive brooming, brushing, or raking done to that area or dragging after I put down that sand. What does happen is I break out my Yeti with iced water in one hand, and then I'm holding the hose in the other, and I'm watering all of that sand in. And that is how I want to see sand incorporated into a grass area. I don't want to see, people rubbing it in, because my goodness, that still reminds me of the time that I fell off of a bicycle when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and that literally dragged me across the pavement when I fell off. I mean, that's similar to putting sand on top of grass and then rubbing it in with something hard, okay? I mean,
Wait.
What?
Wait. What? Huh?
What was that? Watch
Sheila-
out
Sheila's gonna come out and help top dress.
when the tadalafil kicks in. Hey,
yeah,
Yeah.
but then seriously though,
Keeping his hand the hose.
Can you
If-
incorporate this with a whip?
or how about that? Or how about the cat o' nine tails?
Oh yeah.
But seriously, when sand capping or sanding a lawn, my preferred method for getting that sand into the grass and getting it incorporated is with a lot of water.
With my excellent irrigation system.
Yeah, that's,
Hey.
that's what I just
Well,
heard.
it's all by
Great.
hand. It's all by hand.
No, it's
So-
it's all by hand. And suggestion is that I kind of like Ryan's idea of, Ryan, how would you feel if somebody had like a 1.5-inch main line buried in their lawn around the yard, and then they had taps for hoses placed strategically so that they would not need more than about 50 feet of hose to reach any part of the lawn?
I think that'd be perfect.
There you go.
Perfect.
I mean, because I do work on a couple of lawns where they have an irrigation system, and those people happen to have a hose bib or hose bibs tapped into a 1-inch line all throughout the property. So all I have to do if I need to hand water something in, I just hook up my hose to that tap.
Damn.
He's got it, folks. He's got it.
Anybody got a guy? Because I need a guy.
I got it.
I don't think I can do this on my own.
You can.
Oh.
Does Rainbird still offer their training the training book online? Hey, because
Yeah,
back
I looked at that
yeah.
book. It's pretty dense text, but yeah.
So I took a class at a local community college in Memphis, specific to teaching that Rainbird certification course, and I felt like that was money well spent. It was really cheap, but very very effective and came in handy multiple times through my career up to this point.
Awesome.
Well, I know
What else
I've
you got?
installed a number of irrigation systems, so this is very familiar to me. I've installed my share of irrigation.
Yep. What you
so-
got? We got to get to the after show. So rapid fire. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Mhm. My next question was not a rapid fire question, but real mowers. I want to get into it. I want to do it.
Oh.
I know that Rotorola is fantastic, but I'm pulling the blade off every single time and I'm sharpening it. And as lumpy as things are right now, you could go to my Instagram. You could see some Rotorola footage, but I don't know. Am I crazy to want to get into the real mowing game?
Just start with the GM1000 and go from there.
Oh, I was going to say a 220E. Go green. Get a John Deere 220E with the floating head. Have fun.
You know what? You are not nuts, because to me, if somebody says they have a bumpy lawn, that to me is the perfect use case for a properly modified greens mower.
Oh, listen,
actually,
properly modified. That's the caveat there. Hold your breath.
That's the caveat. Yeah, that's the caveat, because
it's a Lingenfelter GM1000.
Yeah, because I have, a Toro GM1000. However, there's certain things done to it that make it suitable for mowing grass all the way up to heights of 3/4 of an inch.
Are you up for that challenge? Or you could get a John Deere 220, put a different reel in it, have all your clip speed controls right there.
Yes.
Back lap right there, flip it, and it's got a floating head, so you give you a little bit of forgiveness in the bumpy area. So
in the lumpy areas, yep. Or
so
I'm gonna go third way, and the other way to do this is cow trimmer with a grooved front roller. I have no.
I was going to ask about, what do you think about the homeowner
No,
models?
I have no objection to that either.
I don't know anything about them.
No, because I have nothing against it, because I've seen cow trimmers do very beautiful work. So, I've got nothing against them. The only caveat to those is that they are not designed to mow very well below a 1/2 an inch. That's the only caveat.
But I mean, you got Kentucky bluegrass. How often are you going to be going below 1/2 an
but
inch?
then
right now I'm at like 3/4, and it looks great. I'm actually really happy with what I got.
Hey, I mean, if you can do 3/4 with that rotary mower on a roller, you can darn well do 3/4 inch with a cow trimmer. I mean, I think it's more than doable. Your lawn is not as bumpy as you think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And especially after that next load of sand comes in, it's going to be a little bit less bumpy, but it is a pain, because I do have to stay away from the Rotorola for a little bit, because last time I got into the sand with that, it was just a completely dull blade. Had to basically start from scratch on sharpening it.
Okay, well, that is where what I normally tell people, and I even practice this myself, is after I sand cap a lawn, there is no more mowing done until I see the grass has grown through the sand and mostly covered the sanded areas, okay? So if I just see like a couple of blades of grass sticking through the sand and I see more sand than grass, no mowing. Okay? I just wait.
Oh, waiting's the hardest part, Ray.
Patience, sir. I mean,
I know.
Then again,
if anything that I've learned, this is one of the most patient hobbies that I've ever had. So, yeah. But I appreciate it, guys. Man, I could pick your brains for hours, and I wish I would have wrote down all my questions, because I'm gonna be kicking myself after this, being like, oh, I wish I could ask that. This is stupid little questions where I'm like, I don't even know. I can't even ask this, because people are going to be like, that's a stupid question.
There are no stupid questions.
There's more time. There's future. Yeah.
Well, there's no stupid questions. I mean, only stupid people.
That's true. That's true.
And this is not the end. This is not the end. No. You are more than welcome to come back whenever you'd like. And I think we avoided the majority of the medical questions that we had intended on asking you. So you're going to have to come back, and so we can
Hey, does this look
accost
like a
you a
rash to
little
you?
bit.
Oh,
There's a reason I'm not a dermatologist, Ryan.
oh, yuck.
All right, let's get over to the after show. Thank you so much.
Yep.
This has been Ear, Nose, and Turf. If you're hanging around, we're going to go hang out over there. And let me tell you a little bit how this works. This is going to be adult talk for adults, adult humor, that kind of fun thing. If you're into that, feel free to check it out, patreon.com/burner return. If you're not into that, by all means, we will not be offended. And that's just kind of how that goes. Also, coming up on Sunday for our patrons, we'll be doing our live recording of our next episode of Burn and Return. And yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side. Yep. Have a good one.
Hi, busy.